years ago, between the 6th and the 10th of August, another chaotic situation happened in London. It was called the London riots. What triggered these riots was a protest in Tottenham following the death of Mark Duggan, a local who was shot dead by police on the 4th of August 2011. All kinds of different people, individually and in groups, started taking to the streets in many London boroughs. It was not planned, it was not premeditated, it just happened. The resulting chaos generated looting, arson, personal attacks, thefts, deaths, damages to personal and business properties, imprisonment, and a huge strain on the emergency services. The following days saw similar scenes in many other parts of London, with the most rioting taking place in Hackney, Brixton, Chingford, Walthamstow, Peckham, Enfield, Battersea, Croydon, Ealing, and East Ham. Were we seeing riots, or people simply taking advantage of the situation? 2 years later, we have come back to visit some of the people in the most affected areas to see how they're getting on after this unforgettable tragedy. Whilst a major part of this was interviewing random people in the boroughs mentioned, we also came across victims of the carnage, volunteers that helped in the aftermath, and real eyewitness accounts. I had the privilege to interview these victims about their experiences and how they have recovered. I spoke to Mr. Trevor Reeves of the House of Reeves in Croydon, Mr. Deepak Shah of the Health Fair Chemist in Enfield, and Mr. Erdal Mehmet of G. Mantella Jewellers, also in Enfield. What were you planning before the August 2011 riots?
We'd actually just planned a mail shot. We had the Friday before the event, which happened on a Monday. We had all the mail shots go out. We sent somewhere in the region of 10,000, 15,000, I can't remember exactly. Mail shots went out on the Friday morning to hit the Saturday morning and the week after. Of course, that didn't really work, did it?
It's normally a relaxing time at that time, really, in the sense that there is most people on holidays, and we always take a break as well at that time.
Describe briefly what happened to you during the riots.
First we heard of it, we got a phone call from the alarm company because our shutters are alarmed, and so is the whole premises. And we just heard that the alarm had gone off. And you don't think anything of it. The first thing you think, well, maybe just a faulty connection on the alarm. And so we drove down, and as we came through getting here, you knew there was something wrong because of, there was debris in the streets and things like that.
We brought all the paperwork to the shop, and because it was Sunday, we kept the shop closed. We had obviously worked with the shutters down most of the day basically, and we heard commotion outside, didn't think much of it. At that time in the evening, there were a few youths hanging around. We thought, shall we go out and go into the car, which is just parked outside, and put a load of paperwork back inside the car before we head off back home. As soon as we opened the grill basically and took one of the boxes of paperwork towards the car, they started running towards the shop basically, so we had to make a dash for it. By the time I reached the door, two of the youths had already come to the door already, trying to kick the door in and trying to get into the shop. It was quite frightening at that time. What transpired was that after the first initial 2 or 3 youths came kicking at the door, loads more came in, roughly 8 or 10 of them, and they started kicking at the windows. We actually managed to barricade ourselves with the door, and then we put all the stands against the door as well, the chairs and everything from the back as well and so forth. So there was a whole barricade erected right at front, because the youths at that time already gone through both of the windows, broken both the windows up, and they were also taking all the stuff which was in both the windows as well and disappearing with them. And they were actually quite brazen enough to actually stand around and show that there's this thing and so forth, and inciting more of the youths to actually come around and obviously loot.
I'd locked the shop up on the Monday night like I normally would, and then I'd gone home. I'd been home for about 15 minutes, and I got a knock from my neighbour saying that one of her relations, who lives over the back of the store here, had phoned them and said there's a lot of activity around at Reeves Corner, maybe I'd like to go back and have a look and see what's going on. First of all, I went to the garage to get a big golf club to put in the back of the car, and then made my way down here. When I turned up here, it didn't look like there was particularly much going on. There were people about. It was as if you were sort of seeing people coming home from a football match. So there's quite a lot of people crossing the road, but there wasn't any particular violence or anything going on. So I parked my car in the car park and walked back towards the shop, by which time there was obviously something going on. There was only a space of about 3 or 4 minutes. And it was at that particular juncture I was standing opposite the shop, saw a broken window, saw someone come out of a broken window, and then there was smoke and fire.
Describe the various ways it affected you.
It's the shock of the moment.
We were hurt a little bit trying to push the barricades against the windows, but luckily it wasn't that much of a trauma that we sustained really compared to what happened to other people.
Certainly affected the business. You know, you can't lose 60% of your floor space without it affecting the business. So we've contracted the business to trade out of the store that we're in now. So that was a big upheaval. Obviously there was a large amount of damage in this store as well as the shop that was burnt down. So we had a lot of work to reorganise what we did here. We didn't, you know, this was a sales store, but it was also storage as well. So we've removed the storage, reorganised all our logistics to make this shop work as a viable store. But of course everything has to be replaced. Everything was smoke damaged from the fire across the road. The store across the road, it was, you know, we had a dangerous structure notice slapped on us the day afterwards. You know, get it knocked down or we'll do it for you by the council, and will cost you 30% more than if we did it ourselves. We learnt a lot about demolition. We learnt a lot about insurance companies. We learned a lot about how, you know, when you're probably at your lowest point, how things contrive to make things worse for you. So it was a very, very difficult time for me, the family, the staff. The staff were brilliant. You know, they all turned up the next day to a man. You know, they'd just seen their whole livelihood being destroyed in front of the whole world on television.
I took to the streets of London to the worst hit areas, asking a variety of people the following questions. Where were you during the August 2011 riots?
I was in Tottenham.
It's actually at a friend's house, and we switched on television and I saw my shop on the news with many rioters outside.
I was going to a meeting, so I went to the high street and discovered that there was something happening, so I stayed there.
I was actually in Croydon and saw it unfolding before my very eyes.
We was in the Tesco's on the high street here, and I remember that the security guard was rushing everybody out of the place.
Just after the police pulled up in Black Horse Road, where there was the possible shooting, I drove past, so I noticed right from the beginning that something was going on.
I was laying down in my bed, watching TV, until somebody called my phone and said, turn the news on, any channel.
I used to live in Enfield, close to town, so I was here. I live in East London now.
I was at Isle of Wight at a camp, a Christian camp that we run with our church.
I was actually then round by the station, which is just behind at the time, and there was quite a reasonable police presence at that time, and I was aware of groups of predominantly young people hanging around in pockets around the town. They weren't actually doing anything, but they were just there, and there was a very uneasy feeling.
I remember I was with my friends, but this time it was like late at night. I got tempted with the people around me, so we decided to join the riot.
I was in Her Majesty's pleasure.
So many people were still in the affected areas. With the power of media, the sights of what happened stretched far and wide. I wondered what their opinions of it are. What were your immediate thoughts?
The first set of riots, I weren't surprised, but then when it kicked off to being really, really violent, I was kind of shocked.
Well, I don't think that's a riot. That's civil disobedience.
Oh dear, and what can I do about this, apart from sit and watch and hope?
Bad, you know, it was like, you don't need that kind of stuff, especially when I saw about that furniture store getting burned down.
It was so scary. It was a scary,
40, 50 people just coming like boom, bang, and they can do anything to you. You know what I mean? It was a scary one.
A lot of people, not me only, but people in prison were worrying about it's where the overcrowding is going to be. What's going to happen? Will it affect a lot of people who were inside? And it did. People had to be moved out.
I was just like what's going on? Because I heard it started with a shooting, and then obviously it's escalating to loads of different places. So I was like why is this happening? I was just confused.
I didn't believe it at first. Okay, I did because it was on the news. But then I thought that can't happen from to where I'm from. It felt surreal.
I thought it was completely understandable.
What I was thinking is just a couple of teenagers or a few people on the streets.
Why is this going on? Why should just normal people be punished because of the government or the police?
It's sad that the riot, the last straw, was because of a guy who was not a model citizen. That was upsetting.
I thought, wow, incredible. People are acting like animals.
My immediate thoughts were, I mean, obviously, before they got to Walthamstow, you'd seen the riots start in Tottenham. They started on the same day that young man was shot dead by the police. That looked like an assassination to me, and it certainly looked like an assassination to lots of people in the black community who thought this is the way we get treated by the police.
Something's going to occur. Obviously we'd never had any form of trouble like that in Enfield town. Like any town centre, you get a little bit of trouble from time to time, but really it's just normally boisterous behaviour.
I thought it was a movie. It's not something you normally see on a daily basis.
We see many have such different thoughts at what happened when it began, even prompting some to take action. Whilst researching for the programme, I encountered a lady whom had acted as volunteer for the people most affected by the riots. She agreed to be interviewed by us and give her first-hand account of the aftermath in Tottenham.
I did a lot of volunteering for a charity that supports witnesses and victims of crime, and offered practical assistance and emotional support for victims of crime, talking to people for a while and signposting them to relevant agencies, for example charities that may help them in terms of providing alternative accommodation as they'd lost everything. There was a big advertisement at Tottenham Green Leisure Centre, and I decided to volunteer because they were looking for people, and I did a few sessions there. It just seems very bizarre to me, having lived in the Middle East and North Africa and seeing people fight for democracy and freedom of speech and freedom of, from oppression, to see people going into shops and taking very poor quality clothes. It just makes a mockery of what real struggle and freedom is.
It is powerful to know there are people who take their own time to selflessly help others. Do you remember any other riots?
Only seen the Brixton riots on the telly, and that was from I think it was the early 80s.
I was born in Tottenham, so the Broadwater Farm riot, I was pretty young, but I saw the aftermath of that.
Where I come from in Sweden, there was a riot a few months ago.
I've seen rioting in the centre of London for anti-capitalist protests. I've also seen rioting earlier on against criminal justice bill.
I was at the poll tax riot in 1990. I was caught up in some riots in Handsworth in Birmingham in the late 1970s.
I noticed that similar things have happened in France.
I wasn't actually there, but I was only down the road from the Brixton riot.
I experienced riots when I used to live in Canada and New York. Brixton riots, yeah, Brixton. In fact, I lost a vehicle in that one.
These were riots that happened in Kenya. Generally take place during the elections.
I was a little girl when the Broadwater Farm riots went on.
I was aware of the Brixton riots back in the 80s, because you used to work up the road.
The Brixton riots.
Back in the 70s, back in good old days when I was a teenager, yeah, there was a few. I think the cause was a bit more poignant.
So a few notable riots remembered there, and we can see how these can stick in the memory. Who do you blame for the riots?
I blame, number one, the police. I've seen young kids just in this bus station here being harassed by the police and being arrested in a very violent way for absolutely doing nothing. Secondly, I blame the government and the rich for imposing this terrible austerity, poverty and unemployment?
That's a very difficult thing to answer, and I think the only people that can answer that are obviously the authorities and the police, who obviously did a lot of investigations.
I think we're all to blame.
Young people's fault, for one, just following what everyone else was doing, because that's probably what it was. No one in their right mind thought, let me get up, start a riot.
You can't blame any particular person, because the riot is the riot's been building up for a long time, and if you look at history, we always have riots. Riots is a valve, it's a social valve to pent people's aggravations.
It's to do with the feeling of disillusionment and disenfranchisement that many people feel with Britain today. Not just the Conservative government, but like government itself.
I just think it got out of hand because obviously it started in Tottenham, but I don't see why Peckham got involved or like these places outside of London. Like, it was just weird.
That's what I thought. At first I thought, alright, it's kind of the police's fault, because obviously, like, if they were a bit racist. So yeah, I understood that, but I didn't understand it escalating to other places.
Whatever happened up there caused people to get into a situation where they were rioting, and that was unique to Tottenham. But when other people, and I presume this has to be criminal elements, found out that people could get away with that, it then spread through the social media that we all know about to other parts of the country.
It started in Tottenham, and I think it was just an excuse. It spread around the country, and I think it just became an excuse to do a little bit of looting.
The blame would be apportioned to mainly the disaffected youth to a large extent, because they have got all the opportunities which people in third world countries don't have. They are not making use of the opportunities that they have, basically.
That's what I would call it, frustration.
The police and the youth.
I blame the situation.
I don't blame anyone. I don't know where to begin.
The government, and that includes every single political party.
A lot of it's to blame the way society's run at the moment.
Can't blame anybody because everybody was out doing their own thing.
I blame the government, I blame so many people, but at the end of the day, I know who to blame.
It's very easy for someone to say, oh, it's a race issue, or it's just the poor rioting. It wasn't. It was a real mixture of people.
I think it's a whole host of factors. People thought they could get away with something. People needed something to do. People didn't have any money, and it all kind of culminated like that.
The breakdown in family morals and values. That's who I blame. Society in general is breaking down this family spirit.
I blame the media, the government, and the policing system.
You see the video footage of the people rioting and looting, big smiles on their faces. They don't just out for themselves.
I don't know if I would blame anybody. I think every party had something to raise. I think I have concerns about how things were raised and how things were brought about.
There were probably a number of factors, perhaps just general discontent with the state of the economy and people's futures with university fees and the rising rates of unemployment.
The obvious people, it's our leaders, our government. I think the riots weren't reflecting what happened as a result of that one case with the police officers. I think it was a frustration of the people.
Tottenham has specific issues in my mind. There was a massive degree of venom against the police up there, whether it was to do with the shooting of Mr. Duggan or whether it's to do with something else, I don't know. But I went to Tottenham after the riots, and it was really, it was frightening.
So many pointing the finger in so many directions. It's clear to see that if we are to tackle the problem, this needs to be done at its very roots and not just deal with the surface actions. These scenes seem to be stuck in a perpetual loop. Once they happen, the cracks are papered over, only to inevitably reappear. During our time filming in Enfield, we were approached by the owner of a local optician asking what we were doing. Once he knew, he asked if he could add his views to our programme and give us his recollection of the events.
I was at home and I was so fascinated to see this thing happening in my town. I got in my car and I went to Tottenham. I went home and I woke up and I thought, I have to go back to Tottenham and see what it looks like in the morning. It was chaos. There was every shop window was smashed. And I started getting text messages from my friends. They were saying to me, look, you better go back to your shop because this thing is coming to Enfield. I checked my Twitter account and they say to me, you know, this thing, like, let's all meet outside the train station at 4 o'clock and we're going to riot Enfield. So that's my shop behind you. I went in there and it took me 2 hours. I took all the stock upstairs, and before you knew it, things started to happen out here. There was a line of police there, riot police. There's a line of kids over there on that side, and they start throwing rocks at the riot police. What was unusual is the police were doing nothing. They were just standing their line. I was upstairs and I started to get scared because from upstairs I could see everything that was going on. I thought, if I leave my shop, they're going to beat me up. So I stayed there till about 9-10 o'clock and I watched it all unfold. Very scary, really scary stuff. These people were hooligans. I remember a lot of them had balaclavas, really aggressive. They moved them down there towards the industrial estate, so Enfield was clear. And then I left here, and the scariest moment of my life is when I opened the back door to leave. I just thought I was going to be whacked over the head with an iron bar. I was really petrified. In the morning, can I say, a lot of people that I saw the night before, I said to them, "What were you doing last night?" And they said they were working. I said, "What do you mean working?" They said they were at Curry's, picking up PCs, picking up laptops. It's disgusting. They thought it was freebies, but now they're in prison. So that's not very funny, is it? In general, it was very unnecessary. The trouble it caused, the people that were hurt, the young people in jail, that their first offence for stealing a bottle of water. For what it achieved, it wasn't worth it.
Gary's first-hand account opens the eyes, even mentioning people he knows who decided to take advantage and now end up with a criminal record and jail time. Do you think the riots achieved anything?
Criminal records for those who were apprehended and bad memories for those who were affected by it.
These things do not achieve very much. Indeed, on this occasion, it gave the police the opportunity to absolutely slam the people that they arrested who got very long sentences.
I think they did make a point, like they did show, but at the same time they ruined their own communities, and I don't think they achieved what they wanted to achieve. So there was no point.
It didn't make sense because people were saying, "Oh, we're doing this to get back at the police," but they're destroying their places where they live.
And they showed that they were violent people.
Exactly.
Yes, it causes more problems. You can't tell me you're going to send somebody to jail for 2 years because they stole an ice cream. That's a problem. Can't get work. Can't get benefits because the Tories are cutting benefits. So that person is pushed further back into the dark of society.
I don't think you can say it achieved anything because I don't think there was an organised central group of people fighting for a cause. There was mainly opportunists.
They certainly didn't, from the point of view of the rioters, no doubt about it at all. From the point of view of the town, as it happens, some really good things came out of it. The community was so supportive. There was an awful lot of anger, particularly from young people. How dare they do this in our town? We don't do things like that here.
All it did just cost society. It cost the prison service, the courts, people's livelihoods were lost their homes, sentimental value.
I think they raised awareness, especially in terms of isolation and marginalisation. I think there were a lot of tensions going about in the neighbourhoods, and I think that was well needed. Unfortunately, it wasn't probably the right way to go about it.
What we need to do is organise and solve our problems, not react.
Raise the profile of the way kind of black people were being policed and treated in certain areas of London.
Politicians take a little bit of notice and then sweep it under the carpet.
I don't think there is any solution to these things. People just get up and do things. Sometimes themselves who do it cannot explain why they do it.
Young people might have got something out of it because maybe they feel they've been listened to more.
In terms of solving certain grassroots problems, no, it hasn't really achieved anything.
I think it's made people more aware of the future that a lot of people are facing nowadays, and hopefully that's going to affect policy and decisions that are made by the governments.
It confirmed all these ideas of fear that people have.
I would have to say it did achieve something, because for the fact that the riots have happened, people probably just a little bit more open-minded.
People were saying, we need back Tottenham, we love Tottenham. So can I unite certain people back together?
It has demoralized a lot of people.
Not for those poor souls that got caught up in some of it, like the guy who had a mental health problem. He's well known for having mental health problems, and walked into a Greg's Bakers and picked up a gingerbread man off the floor. Ended up getting 18 months in jail for that, and he died in jail.
Despite the outcome of the riots, no one wants to see it repeated. Riots are a reoccurring strand of behaviour in London, and evidence states that riots and protests involving violent behaviour date back as far as the 12th century with the massacre of the Jews at the coronation of Richard I. In the 18th and 19th century, riots and protests increased compared to previous centuries. Some of these occurrences were over religion, rates of pay, unlawful imprisonment, and rises in prices of theatre tickets. The 20th century has experienced double the amount of riots that we saw in the 18th and the 19th century combined. We've already lived through 6 riots in the 21st century. Based on the facts and statistics, there are many riots and other protests to come. Can they be avoided? Would you predict another riot in the future?
If something that big all over London, like the UK even, can happen over that shooting, then who's to say that it can't happen again?
I don't think there'll be another riot, because I think people learned their lesson this time, just seeing their communities get destroyed. So I doubt it will happen again.
It is inevitable. While people feel that, while they're discriminated against, while we have such an unequal society, that people will, from time to time, rebel against it.
I'm shocked at what gets put through every day in this country, so I wouldn't be surprised if there were more.
Personally, I don't believe there will be, because we came down hard on people.
I think there's always the possibility of further riots.
It's going to be different, you get me, but it will definitely occur.
Yeah, they tend to happen, you know. If we have a conservative government, then definitely.
I think the way things are, I think very much so. I mean, people, find it struggle to get by.
No, I think it's highly unlikely, but who's to say in this world?
They didn't achieve anything, nothing got sorted, so I see it happening again. I hope that will not be the way, and I hope that the 2011 riots have actually raised issues on how actually communities can get together and discuss things.
Our society is getting more and more unfair, and the gap between the rich and the poor is increasing all the time. Welfare support is getting harder to reach, jobs are getting harder to find, and so this kind of social imbalance is just going to cause more and more people to be upset. And when you get to a moment where people will behave outside of the law, there will be rioting. I'm sure it will happen again.
I'm quite sure that there are disturbances, difficulties in our way of life now, right across the world, which are bound to lead to more trouble.
Yes. No.
Anything's possible.
I mean, there will be, inevitably.
These things are quite unpredictable.
I hope for a revolution.
Another riot could happen.
If you look around the world now, you're getting little pockets of riots in lots of different countries for different reasons. So can you avoid them? I don't think you can avoid them if someone's dead set on causing a riot.
There will always be another riot in the future. Why? Because there's always disenchanted peoples and disinterested governments or government bodies.
If the government don't shape up, then it might get another riot in the future.
I think Wenger's got one more year, and if he don't win a trophy, there'll be a riot at the Emirates. I think, of course, there'll be riots. There'll be riots for stupidness, and they look at this. You have all these EDL marches. You have all look at this Soldier Lee Rigby. I mean, people were worried, is he going to kick off again?
If it happens, you know what? I'm going to tell you the truth. It's going to be a more worse than this is nothing.
Many do not want to see a repeat of these riots, but history suggests it is inevitable if things don't change. Riots and protests seem to be created out of a group of people who feel they've been taken advantage of, which then leads to an outrage. Why would somebody want to take away another's liberty without any reasonable explanation? If things do not improve in the future, will we be seeing these incidents again? These thoughts I leave to your own consideration. Whilst filming on the streets of Tottenham, stopping random passers-by for interviews, we encountered a lady who had been falsely arrested for participating in the riots. This is her account.
The evening of the riots, I was actually in my mother's house and I got a telephone call letting me know that Tottenham's rioting and stuff like that. So I stayed in because I felt it was better for myself and better for my children to be far away from it as possible. A couple of weeks later, I actually got arrested for allegedly taking part in the riots, which I wasn't there. I got locked up for 4 hours in a police station. I expressed to the police officer that I was very, very unhappy at the situation, and he let me go, no charges or anything like that. So I was kind of concerned how innocent people basically get caught up in the riots even though they weren't there.
Thankfully, she was not charged for something she did not do, or this may have become the catalyst for other actions to have taken place. We also met others in similar positions and worse, but they did not want to appear on camera. During my research for this programme, I spoke to a lot of people in the affected areas. I saw the ramifications of the actions that took place where the riots started, and I even walked the whole of Church Street that led to the site where the House of Reeves once stood after its fiery end. It was a phenomenal feeling walking the street packed full of people, seeing how life had quickly sprung back to the areas that were so badly affected, leaving them with the trauma of the experience. Seeing a place like rock bottom rebuilt and operating again shows a determination within these communities. All accounts are from victims and members of the public. We asked police and local council leaders for their opinions and thoughts on the riots, but they all declined to take part in this documentary. The people who were most keen to be involved were those directly and most strongly affected. The social problems continue and members of the public carry on with life regardless of what has happened in their communities, but they are keeping a wary eye on what is going on around them. Although these opinions are varied, they are strongly felt and relevant. After all this has been experienced, I came to the conclusion that this was less based on political agenda and more based on people expressing their anger and frustration.
I think it was attacked to create a diversion, to allow people to go to other places to take stuff that is much more portable and much more valuable.
Ruining other people's businesses isn't going to bring justice.
Young people haven't got people to look up to.
The whole system needs a big improvement, really, in the sense that they need to actually decide how they want to educate this, because the youth of today is tomorrow's future.
I think there are a lot of pressures around which mean that it's very urgent and very important that we spread much more understanding about why human beings behave the way they do right across society in all cultures.
I've not been that sort of person anyway, that any little thing that would happen you just give up trading and go away, because life throws things at you and you have to deal with them. The aftermath, though, has been all positive, really.
We started the campaign We Love Enfield. That was actually started by the management of a local printing company, Fast Signs in Enfield Town. They had their windows damaged and they thought, we'll put some stickers up over the cracks, and they gave them out throughout the town. And in the end, I had people phoning me up saying, Mark, where can I get one of these stickers of We Love Enfield? It really brought the community together.
We were all absolutely staggered at the goodwill that was shown towards us. It is a family business. It has been around for 140 plus years on the same site. It has been through 5 generations. We are a solid family unit. Everybody in the local area knew that shop. Everybody was really fantastic. The atmosphere around here changed. There was a real fighting spirit. There's lots of instances of this. There's a chap that came down from Leicestershire and he wanted to buy a wardrobe, but he'd only buy the wardrobe if my dad signed it. So we wheeled out my dad and he signed it and he put it in the back of his van and off he went back up to Leicestershire. People just came down and bought. It was, you know, we were doing as much business out of one small fire damaged shop as we were out of 2 shops prior to that. You know, the response was just unbelievable, and we're so grateful that people, you know, saw that in the family and saw that in the shop and responded that way to us.
The problem I have with the riot is that people destroyed where they lived. You destroy where you live, you don't like where you live.
They're not looking at it as we're destroying things. They're not looking at it as we're making people's life a misery or hurting anybody. They're looking at it as we're going to have fun.
I think that one thing that came out of the riots was that the community pulled together, and instead of blaming everybody, I think we all felt we could do something about it. Certainly our input of trying to get the We Love Enfield campaign going had the effect of galvanising the community, including young people. I think it's important to say that. It wasn't just old people and elderly people saying, oh, they've wrecked our town. Many young people came out in disgust as well. So it did have the effect of galvanising everyone to maybe make for a better tomorrow.
Reeves Corner has been there for a long time, and they've just took that out of the block completely.
The site has been burnt down. It's been like that for a long time. We put all the hoarding pictures up, the old pictures of the family up around there. They've now been there for 18 months. They've done their job. They've done the purpose. Now let's get rid of the riots. Let's move on and get things sorted out. Let's have a nice open area there which people can enjoy while the plans to make Croydon better are going on. That's what we like.
Before I go, I'd like to say thank you to all the people on the streets and all of the other people that lent us their time at such short notice.
Thank you for watching. My name is Richard Pugh. I hope you enjoyed it.
Will our cities have to burn before you learn about equal rights and justice? Report after report, commission after commission, and still we're in the same position. Scarman, McPherson, the list goes on, and still me can't see nothing one. In the policeman's hand, another black youth dies, and when we ask why, we get told pure lies. If riot be the voice of the unheard, can you hear me now? Do I need to turn up the volume? The youths, they feel they've been mugged for years just by listening to government scares, and for law and order, they have no fears. It's not because it's the life they choose, but with nothing to gain, there's nothing to lose. The youths, they need youth clubs, not prisons. Youth workers, not wardens. Inspiration, not probation. Humanity and morality are in the vocabulary of the poor and the needy. You change your laws, but it does not change your cause when you still support your racial wars. From overt to covert, you suppress my people, and you don't want us to speak of the evil. It may offend, but it's not a crime. Still you say, I'm out of line. You make it an offense to speak of the pain just because you can't take the shame. Divide and rule is still your tool. It's implemented from in the school. Stop and search is intimidation designed to break the spirit of a nation. Is it wrong to speak of the facts when every day you target blacks? There's no respect for race and tradition unless we succumb to a simulation and work twice as hard to make the same progression. Your buildings will raise back out of the dust, but will you ever build the people's trust? You see, in your mind, we could never be right, just because we're the wrong social type.